All right, guys, it's time. It's that time of the day where we got to look at this guy here. I've been getting a lot of people saying, "Papa God, what the hell's going on here?" This is the current ultimate feminist of TikTok, ultimate male feminist of TikTok. I'm just going to be very frank with you. There are no allegations against this person, but this gives me Joe Robe energy, and I personally think that you should be very careful around men who identify as feminists and just say everything that women want to hear, because that's usually a recipe for disaster. This guy, from what I've seen, is very ignorant. He doesn't give particularly intelligent takes, and so we're just going to go through a few of them and give you guys some quick, why is this bad logic, So, let's see. Isn't it weird how fatherless behavior became an insult to women when it literally refers to men who have failed as fathers? Sure, I guess that's fine. That's actually a reasonable one. Hey, shut the fuck up. Reporting your abuser doesn't damage their reputation. It makes... Okay, that's fine. If you didn't want to get falsely accused of sexual assault... Oh, oops. You should never have left the house dressed as so falsely accusable. I mean, I guess that's a counter. I suppose that's supposed to be a counter to people who, are rape apologists. The thing is, though, is that, the implication here, the subtext here, is that most men blame women nowadays. It's not socially acceptable, nor should it be socially acceptable, to blame somebody for what they were wearing when they were assaulted. And so, it doesn't make sense. Because what's happening is that he's proposing a target that doesn't really exist. Very few people think this. And the people who do are admonished by every community. And he's promoting this as the boys, and then people get all riled up. But okay, this one isn't the worst of it. If you were actually pro-life, you would understand forcing someone to raise an unwanted child in poverty is no life worth living for either the mom or the child. That's the whole abortion argument. I'm not even going to get into that. Tips for men in public: if you wouldn't do it to another man, don't do it to a woman. Catcalling, moving someone by their waist. Okay, I suppose. I feel like it doesn't have to be a man versus a woman thing. You just shouldn't catcall. One of the things, though, is that we're not talking about is, what is the difference between catcalling and hitting on somebody in public? Because it's perfectly social. It's perfectly acceptable to engage in the ritual of saying, hey, I find you attractive. Can I get your number? And if they say no, you just disengage. So, yeah. Right, so this is a big one. Misogyny is praising male athletes for using their body to make a living while invalidating women in sex work for doing the same. This one bothers me quite a bit. Because the message to me here is saying that you should be engaged in sex work, and you shouldn't. Sex work is bad for you. Sex work shouldn't exist. Now, I don't have any disrespect to people who do it, because I feel most people who engage in OnlyFans or Spice accounts or whatever, or sex work, do it usually out of economic reasons, socioeconomic problems. They can't find a job, or they were honestly groomed into the position from a young age, and so this is all that they know. And honestly, I think that the existence of sex work really speaks to me about the lack of opportunity that exists in general, and the fact that we need to expand opportunity in some capacity. So, but advocating for people to engage in sex work, which, by the way, is also associated with incredible amounts of abuse and sex trafficking, so it's not a good thing. Advocating for sex work is bad. It is mentally draining and stressful on people to be engaged in this type of work. That is an objective truth. That is how people feel. People don't 99.9% of people who engage in this type of work are very mentally distressed, and they have a lot of problems. And so it's not a good thing. Meanwhile, an athlete is an incredible profession to get into. That's very good for your mentality. But here's the one thing that I'm going to be very quick about this, and this is something that I think that you guys should I think that this is one of those things where when you get into these idealistic fields where people will be like, where they make these horrible dog shit comparisons like this, it's a one simple question. If you had a daughter, would you rather her be an athlete, or would you rather her be a sex worker? The answer is you would rather them be an athlete. That's what it would be. Right? So answer that question, because you know that it's not a good field for them to go into. That's the reality of the situation here. Let's see what we got here. Why do feminists hate men? Good question. And why does a movement about liberating women become so misunderstood that it's still about men? So this is like one of those problems here, is that like it does seem like modern feminism hates men. It seems like there's a very heavy push, especially like for a while there was like a push that was like kill all men, like men are the problem, overly generalizing men, basically assigning rhetoric towards men that would be considered racist if you did it towards like a marginalized group, like black people or gay people. Where it's like you take the worst of a particular group and then you generalize and pretend the entire group is like that. That's one of like the problems that people are dealing with, and I think that there is room for feminism to exist. I think that feminism should be talking more about issues with autoimmune diseases. They predominantly affect women, but they're incredibly underfunded. Things about not have the wage gap, because the wage gap is really an earnings gap, but more that like jobs that women tend to go towards are underpaid, like social workers. Like the pay for the jobs women gravitate towards are undervalued in our society. We undervalue femininity in our society, which you could see where masculine women nowadays are even praised, but feminine men are looked down upon. Femininity is seen as a weakness in our society, and that's what feminism should be fighting for. But for the most part, you hear them talk about a wage gap that doesn't take into consideration the amount of hours worked, because men work overall more hours, they take less time off, and they work the jobs that pay better. Right? So we're not in the right space, and it seems very anti-male rather than like pro-woman. And so like that's one of the problems here. This is why this is an ignorant perspective here. It's saying I have a boyfriend works better than no, because a lot of men respect not upsetting another man than taking a no from a woman. That's not really true. In general, I would say that most of the time people say I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend so that they don't offend the person that they're talking to, because they don't want to be rude. I've never heard a woman, honestly, who's ever talked about this as being toxic, where they're like, I don't have a boyfriend because they were afraid, rather than saying no. Most of the time people are just being nice. They don't want to have to, and they don't want to have to explain their shit. Because nowadays, for whatever reason, everybody's expected to explain everything, right? A simple no. Like, I have a boyfriend, okay. I have a girlfriend, okay. I've done it before. I have a girlfriend, okay. It's much easier. It's just easier than saying no, thank you, and then having to deal with a potential why. This encompasses everything. I think that to assign this as like some kind of a anti-woman, pro-male thing is ridiculous. We only label women as having resting bitch faces because society expects women to be a pleasant to men 24/7 or labeled as bitchy. No, I did disagree with that. Listen. I will say that some stronger women get shit for being bitchy, mostly in like more managerial jobs, and that's a fair criticism. But there are people, not just women, with resting bitch face. Like resting bitch face is outside of the realm of strong women being considered bitches just for being strong women. This isn't even the right message. He could have said like, why do we shit on women? Why do we consider women bitches when they're just trying to be strong? That could have been a good message, because some women that are just strong women, or like managerial women that are trying to be more male, like masculine, not even masculine, but being like a manager, they get like, oh, you're a bitch. Well, no, they're just doing what they're supposed to do, right? Girls don't mature faster than boys. Girls are just punished from an early age for the same behavior boys are allowed to indulge in well into adulthood. Listen, it's an objective fact that girls mature faster than boys. That's not even like a debatable thing. Like girls they're more mature than boys. It's just the truth. Now, the only bad thing about saying that we have to acknowledge is that just because girls grow up more mature doesn't excuse men's behavior with talking to younger girls, because you have to be careful with that, right? So just because a girl matures faster doesn't mean it's okay that you as a 25-year-old talk to a 16-year-old, you gross fuck, right? But women do just like biologically mature faster. That's why women are more intelligent at a younger age. And that's why women, general, the median for women is more intelligent than men. Men have like a higher fluctuation in intelligence. That being said, I suppose there are some factors of girls are punished for some things that boys do. I suppose that's true. And boys are punished for some things that girls do as well. I feel like these are two separate things. This is a lie, and then this is just rhetoric based on a lie. You know what I mean? So it's just not particularly intelligent. There are points there that like could be made by people with intelligence, but he's just pushing them in the way that's his most anti-male, but it's anti-everybody because it hurts the conversation. But anti-male, pro-woman as possible. It's not anti-male or pro-woman. It's anti-everything because it's anti-conversation. A lot of men prefer to have sons over daughters because It's easier to pass down misogyny rather than raise a potential victim of it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Every single unanimously person I've ever talked to talks about how it's easier to raise boys than girls. I don't really know why exactly. Maybe girls are cattier or something, but it's nothing to do with misogyny. Girls are just a pain in the ass. That's what I hear. All right, boys are easier. All right, maybe they don't complain as much. Just ask somebody with kids. Honestly, I can't complain about that. I can't comment too much on it. All I know is what I'm told, and everybody's like, "Yeah, boys are just easier to raise." You know, and we're having this whole thing about misogyny. Everything's misogynistic. It's just, it's just, I'd rather have a girl than this thing. You know what I mean? Whatever the hell that is. A lot of men need to realize a woman doesn't have to always provide access to her body as proof that she likes you. Okay, that's true. Same for men as well, right? But yeah, that's fine. This is a fine one. You could stick to these. If you notice, though, the normal ones only get 6,000 likes. The ridiculous ones get 81,000 likes. So you see how this is one of those things, is that TikTok is that he's pandering to an audience that's giving him feedback, asking to be pandered to. Because when he says some out-of-pocket dumb shit, he gets like hundreds of thousands of views. But when he says something normal that's just true, it doesn't get any views because it doesn't get anybody offended, because this is truth. A lot of people need to realize that people don't have to provide their body as proof that somebody loves you. That's true. The hypocrisy of men who catcall is that they would start a literal fight if a gay guy remotely did the same to them. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure if that's true. Could be true. Okay. I don't know. Fine, I suppose. I think that, again, like, catcalling is something that we don't accept as a society. It's a bad thing to do. It's rude and it's intrusive and it's shitty, and we as a society are admonishing those things. What I will say, though, is that men who catcall women are policed more than men who catcall other men. And this is one of the problems that we don't talk about, is that we police the group that's seen as the dominant, but we don't police other groups to the same degree. And that means that, gay men get away with hitting on straight men in the same toxic manner as straight men get away with hitting on women. You understand what I'm saying? Which is an unfortunate thing. But this is fine, I suppose. It's not that bad. Media will show sexual assault scenes for historical accuracy, but have razor commercials for women shaving an already shaved leg. This one's a little cringe. I don't know why. So this, to me, screams we're weaponizing sexual assault so that we can generate views for our post. The reason that you shave an already shaved leg is because it looks better for women on the commercial. Just want you guys to know. This is just what you know. Shaving commercials are for women. They're not for men. So, shaving commercials are geared towards women buying razors, not towards men. I've never jerked off to a shaving commercial. That's for women. That's your fucking problem. That's a woman's problem, all right? That a woman makes those commercials, not me. They just feel that's the best way to promote razors. And you want to know what the real thing you could have said is? Men's razors are better. Stop buying women's razors. Stop letting the ideal of masculinity being assigned to a razor stop you from buying men's razors, which are objectively better than women's razors. Women like men's razors more than women's razors. That's the truth. That's the truth. And we know it's the truth. It's just the truth. However, the whole media showing sexual assault, it just is completely irrelevant. It's weaponizing sexual assault to provoke an emotional response. And that's really shitty. That's a really terrible thing to do. That's a thing that a bad person would do. If you only ever bring up men's rights in reaction to feminism, you care more about invalidating feminism and less about actual gender equality. So, listen, there are some people who are reactionary meninists that do this, and it's toxic, for sure. However, we just talked about before how the New Age feminist movement doesn't really seem to have quite a direction. And so a reasonable assumption is to make that, like, sometimes when women talk about women's issues, they tend to just be in a way that invalidates men. That's how it seems to be. And I found that a lot of times the reaction to feminism will be things like, well, how do you explain men killing themselves at a higher rate or having a higher, or rather, no, they won't say how to explain. They'll say, like, here are some men issues. Men have higher suicide rates. Men have more societal pressure. They are less likely to get their child in a custody battle. They are less likely to get on welfare programs. They're more likely to live on the streets. They're more likely to go to prison, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these are all reasonable points to make when talking about equality. Or, for instance, women don't have to sign up for the draft. There's a lot of spaces where women there's lower expectations of women than men. You know, like when it comes to police officers or becoming in the army. And some people will bring these up as a reaction, and then, like, all of a sudden, well, no, they're being sexist. It's like, well, why? We're talking about equality. If feminism is about equality, we should be able to talk about the inequalities that men face as well. Right? But, of course, this is just created to pander to women. Some men are way too obsessed in finding any way to debunk sexual assault statistics. Like, that's what made you so defensive. You know, the conversation around sexual assault is very interesting because it's hard to really figure out what the truth is. There are statistics saying upwards of like 97% of women face some kind of sexual harassment. And I remember looking into that study, and like a lot of it was just people getting like comments on an Instagram post was a big part of it. And it's like you're going to talk about that, but that removes all nuance. A lot of people put up sexualized pictures of themselves on social media, and then they get sexualized comments, and then they go, "Why are you saying this?" And it's like, well, if you're wearing a bikini and showing me your ass, now I wouldn't do it because I think it's gross in general, but you are effectively asking to have your ass commented on if you're in a bikini with your ass out at the camera, right? And then the response to that will be like, "Oh, you're just victim blaming." No, I'm not. There's a difference between sexual assault. And there's a difference between dressing the way you want to dress on the street and having the right to not be physically violated, and going on Instagram and making a post with your ass in a bathing suit specifically for validation based on that picture. You're asking for that. And being upset with the response you get, right? When you're in public, you're dressing for probably your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever, or maybe yourself. When you're on Instagram, you're dressing for people to respond to your picture. Why else did you post it? If you thought it looked nice, keep it in your own phone. Also, a lot of men have they've had allegations of sexual assault, like false allegations, and they get defensive. Like, I've been there. You get defensive. Like, it's frustrating because, like, you getting put into a position, especially now, where people like this will say, like, "Oh, you were falsely accused. Well, you're still wrong." It's like, well, what the fuck? If you think being a feminist makes you any less of a man, you're admitting your idea of masculinity requires the oppression of women. That's just dumb. I think more than anything else, men who identify as feminists, to me, from what I've seen, they usually do it to just to befriend women and then like cross boundaries that women normally like would set up for other men. Like we've seen it. I keep seeing it. Calvin, Brandy, Joe Robe, they identified as feminists, so, and one of them sexually assaulted a girl, the other one sexting minors, showing his dick to kids. I'm afraid of male feminists more than anything else. And I get the vibes from him. I'm not saying he does any of these things, but I get the same vibes from this guy. You know? And maybe I'm wrong about him, and I hope I am, and I probably am. But I'm still afraid of male feminists. Because if you find a misogynistic asshole in public and they're a misogynistic asshole, you know what you're getting. You got a guy like this pretending to be a feminist, you know, but then they predatorize on women, right? Because a lot of male feminists, and there are people who have done this before, they'll sexually harass women, and then when they catch you, they're like, "Well, I'm sorry, but we live in a society where men aren't taught the right way to treat women, so I'm just a victim of the environment of a society that's misogynistic." Meanwhile, that person pretends that they know women's issues, but they cross the lines. They're just using feminism to get close to you, and then the second that it works out for them, they blame the society for them being predators. Right? You notice how that's what male feminists do. It's fucked up. Why don't women just report their assaulters, we'll say? Bill Cosby to be released after Pennsylvania. I mean, I guess this video is fine. It's fucked up that Bill Cosby got out. The reason that women don't report their people is because historically they've been diminished. Like, it'll come out and like, you didn't do that, and we don't talk about the nuance unless it's like a hard line. He definitely raped you. Usually they'll side with the man, and that's what sexual assault culture is about: is identifying positions where women are made to feel unsafe and taken advantage of, where even the men may not necessarily realize that they're doing it. Right? That's why women don't come forward. But like, this situation was the DA or whatever botched the case with Bill Cosby and like promised he wouldn't get punished, which is just bullshit. But this one is like generally fine. I just feel like we should talk about the real reason women don't come forward, because then you can educate men on what to do correctly. Make sure you, as mostly a man, like women can do this as well, make sure as a person, though, you make sure that the person that you're engaging with, like just having a conversation with, feels comfortable saying no. If you need to say, hey, do you want to go on a date? You don't have to. Just asking. If you don't want to do it, no problem. Do that. Hey, do you want to go to my place? If you don't feel comfortable, don't worry about it. We can still go on another date. It has nothing to do with going on a second date. Just wondering if you're ready. Say things like that. Give people, especially women, the feeling of safety of not having to have sex with you on the first date or go into a situation. On the first date, you know, you should say, hey, I'll drive you there, but if you don't feel comfortable, I totally understand. Because some women get like afraid to get driven to places because then they feel like they're stuck. You understand? Right? Like, I've heard stories about how guys will pick up girls and then they'll bring them to their house and then like, oh, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, and then they feel like they have to do something. If we can agree there is no such thing as consensual, okay, sexual assault. Let's stop calling actual rape non-consensual. I mean, this one is just the way people speak online to not get censored. Like, you've noticed that I've said sexual assault instead of rape sometimes because, like, I'm trying not to get censored or demonetized or something. Now, this video probably is going to get demonetized. But, like, the point is that sometimes they'll use language that's more politically correct. And I find it interesting that somebody that more aligns with, like, progressive ideology would be offended by people trying to speak more sensitively. Because sometimes it can be very triggering for women to hear the word rape. And like, you're just triggering the fuck out of people with reckless abandon. Meanwhile, you might want to use non-consensual sex or use sexual assault or use like a different term for it. Imagine the outrage if there was a picture of 7 women signing a law restricting male reproductive rights. Here's the thing. This is something that we have to talk about more than anything else. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle on when it comes to pro-life, pro-choice. I'm not going to get into it. I'm pro-choice. I understand why people are pro-life. Most people in my family are like personally pro-life, societally pro-choice, because they understand that there are conditions that like other people have, and they're the best at understanding their situation, right? That's the way that I basically feel. Okay? But here's the thing. There's no male reproductive right that could potentially threaten a potential human life. Right? Like, it's not like we shoot eggs out of our assholes. Like, women have the unfortunate responsibility of carrying children. So, of course, there are people who feel abortion is killing a thing. And it is killing a thing. But there's a lot there. The point is some people find that really morally reprehensible. Right? So I understand why they might want to restrict that thing. I get why you would do it, even if I disagree. And so, like, there's no male equivalent. That's why we have this conversation. Now, do I think it's still shitty that a bunch of men would sit there and talk about it? Yeah. This one here, I believe that's not... The picture was bigger. I don't know why his face needs to be the emphasis, but I believe they're implementing a restriction of Planned Parenthood getting government funds to provide abortions. So, you know, Planned Parenthood gets like half of its revenue from not the government, from donations. So maybe Planned Parenthood doesn't need the government money. You know, that's a different conversation, though. It's important to bring up the nuance there. Men will literally piss in public and still won't be demonized as women who breastfeed in public. I don't know how I feel about this one. Because there's very few people who piss in public, and then when they do, all of them are losers, right? Like, most of the time, you hear piss in public, man or a woman. It's some drunk asshole. Am I wrong? First thing you think of, you're a drunk loser, okay? When it comes to a woman breastfeeding in public, Now, this might be my ignorance, and you might disagree with this, but I usually get the feeling that when a woman breastfeeds in public, they're usually bored moms who just want to stir up controversy. Now, that could be, you know what? That's not necessarily true. It's when it comes to breastfeeding on TikTok. That's my perspective. Because why do you have to do it for TikTok to see it? When you're in public, I get it. You're just feeding your kid. Maybe you didn't have time to pump or something. I think you should generally pump to be a little bit more courteous to people around you, but whatever. It's a little weird, not a huge deal. But I think that pissing in public is just objectively more disgusting. You know what I mean? Or though, sometimes you'll have to pull off on the side of the road on a long road trip to take a piss. Then in that part, most people don't care. I don't give a fuck. It depends on where it is. If you're peeing on the side of like a highway where like you're not encouraged to stop, you know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to pull over and then see your penis, usually, or your vagina. But, like, if you're in public pissing on a building, like, yeah, you're an asshole. So, being a feminist doesn't mean you hate men. I don't think it does either. Unfortunately, there do seem to be some modern-day feminists who just simply hate men and want to, propagate that rhetoric. However, not being a feminist doesn't mean you hate women. Oh, no. That's dumb. I feel, my perspective on it is like men shouldn't identify as feminists. They should just identify as like feminist supporters. But I think that I think most people don't identify as feminists because like they don't feel like the movement has anything to identify with. They don't feel like there's like a set of like reasonable demands from people who identify as feminists. If you've ever guilt tripped her into having sex with you, you're a rapist. Now, we talked about this one on a separate video. It's called, like, is it okay to guilt women into bed? The shorthand, though, is that, like, there's a lot. It's a very loaded video. I don't want to go over too much here. You should go watch that one. But basically, it's not sexual assault. I don't believe that it is to guilt somebody, but it's very disgusting and predatory. And I think that setting the goalpost of whether it is or isn't rape is a problem. I think we need to focus more on the fact that usually the male perspective is like, well, I guilted her. I was just asking to have sex and she gave in, rather than understanding that the women feel pressured to give in because they feel unsafe when you do that. And that's the conversation to have, because I would guarantee most men don't try to make women feel unsafe. They just don't understand how it feels to be in that position, and so they don't empathize with women enough. And that's the conversation to have more than anything else. And that's what I think this video does a disservice to the true conversation about the way women feel when it comes to being pressured into sex. Or not even just women. Men can feel this as well. People who are in more, you could say, submissive spaces, whether it's a man or a woman, where the other person has some kind of a power dynamic aspect over them. And a man usually has a physical power dynamic over a woman because they're physically stronger, which is why women feel intimidated by men, especially in vulnerable spaces. Usually when you're asking to have sex and you're guilting someone into having sex, it's usually in a vulnerable space where a woman doesn't feel like she can get away from that space. Just because you take it as a compliment doesn't mean it's not harassment. That's fine. This is a fair video. This one is totally fine. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think men don't get complimented, and they're just, like, compliment starved, so they think it's okay to be like, you're nice tits, you know what I mean? Women go by Miss, Mrs., or Miss, or Mrs., whatever. Is that how you say it? Miss, Mrs., and Miss, whatever. Whereas men only go by Mr. because society unfairly values women according to their relationship to a man. That one's probably true. I'm not going to give that one too much shit. That's historically true. I think nowadays that's just the remnants of a non-supported ideology, and we don't assign that value to it quite as much. So that's the way that I would look at that one more than anything else. Men go on literal murder sprees because they can't get laid. I don't think that's true at all. Usually people are... So, nobody kills people because they don't get laid. If you will kill somebody because you didn't get any pussy, it's because you have a mental problem. You have a fucking issue that you need to be evaluated. And that's not to diminish what they did. But, like, no normal person will kill somebody. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be incredible circumstances for a normal person to kill somebody. Like, somebody that you love is in danger or something. But please tell me how women are too emotionally volatile. Whatever. I mean, I guess women are just more emotional. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing necessarily. I don't really know what to say. Like, usually in my experience, like, women tend to be more emotional in some spaces, and It's just like my girlfriend's just annoying sometimes. I just whatever. My mom's not emotional though. Like she's a very more masculine woman. I just don't know how to. I just don't know how to. It's just like one of those like okay, you know what I mean? All right. Somebody sent me this one. Said it was removed. It basically says if she's too young to wear that. Or are you thinking like a pedophile? I've talked about this one in length, but basically, like when it comes to somebody thinking okay, there's a big problem. We're gonna go back to the original one with the athlete versus OnlyFans. We'll start with the very commonsensical question: do you think it's appropriate for a 3-year-old girl to wear lingerie? And you will say no. If you say yes, you are a pedophile. Okay? You say no because you understand that fundamentally clothing has different values assigned to it. Some clothing has the value of sex assigned to it. You shouldn't put children in sexually assigned clothing. Then there we go. This sets us up perfectly for this. There are a lot of men, especially like myself, who will say things to women like, you're probably too young to wear that, because they know that there are disgusting men out there that they want to protect those women from. That's what this comes from. And like, I find it very gross that you fundamentally, according to this logic, you are effectively saying it's okay for 3-year-olds to wear lingerie. That's what he's saying. Now, I don't know if he actually understands he's saying that. I would give him the benefit of the doubt and say that if he was confronted with this logical moral question, he would go, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. My bad. But what you're effectively promoting pedophilic behavior by saying dumb, ignorant shit like this. He apparently removed this, though. If she was asking for it, why couldn't you? I don't think anybody defends she was asking for it anymore. That's a gross, disgusting historical issue. I'm not gonna give this one too much shit. I just feel like this one. Okay, you know. Does he really think you're mature for your age? Probably not. It's probably a manipulation tactic. That one's fair. Is there any more? Or is he trying to make himself feel better about grooming you? Yeah, that one's fair. Men will joke about how likely and horrible it is to get raped in prison without realizing that women have to live with that. Okay, women don't live with that every day. It goes back to the conversation that, like, generally the statistics of people are like 1 in 5 women are raped. They're not. They like 1 in 5 women like will face some kind of like sexual harassment. It's true that like there is like an epidemic of women getting violated. Let's not even talk about whether it's sexual assault or not, because I feel like that's a dishonest conversation. Violated in some capacity that's very impactful to them. That one's fine, I suppose. I guess it's not that much of an issue. The framing is a bit bizarre, but I'm not going to go too crazy onto that one. That one's okay, I suppose. Yeah. Oh, I guess this is the start of his profile. There's not too much more. This one's about Muslim men. I think we got most of them. The other ones, let's see. She's not dressed like a slut, you're just thinking like a rapist. That one's fine as well. Too many men are being concerned with being one of the good ones rather than creating an environment where bad ones can't exist. I don't know what that really means. This one screams to me like this is you. You're too obsessed with being one of the good ones. I don't know. The environment where bad ones can't exist, I feel like that's a good thing. We are talking about that. That's what we do on our stream. We educate people on sexual assault and especially young men on understanding the way you're supposed to interact with women. I don't think that you're doing this, though. You're not creating an environment where bad men don't exist or can't exist. Fetishizing daddy issues is both predatory and creepy. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty gross. But like women do this too. I think we got a pretty good look into this guy. Did she pick you?
She did. He did too. And so did they. I got picked across the board. I do get at what you were trying to infer with that comment though. And for me, being against rape culture makes me a pick-me. I'll take the title.
I don't know. This guy gives me more and more Joe Rogan vibes after hearing him. Men should care less about their daughters being sluts and more about their sons being rapists. You should care about both, I suppose. But yeah, true. I feel like you should care about both of them. You shouldn't want your daughter to be slutty, or your son to be slutty, and you shouldn't want your son or daughter to be a rapist. So, yeah, I think we got the nice general flow of this guy. Socialist feminism writer editor. I'm not surprised. Honestly, like I said before, this to me screams like Joe Robe. I don't know, man. It gives me vibes that are very creepy and cringy, and I don't think he's having the right conversations about any social issues. I find this very like basic way that we talk about issues to be very toxic because it doesn't contribute to the conversation; it contributes to the divide.